He allegedly fought in Syria for Al Qaeda-tied militants.
Hell yeah. We smoked about, I don't know, 10, 20.
Bragged on the internet about shooting down a Syrian aircraft. And he is an American. Eric Haroun, a former U.S. soldier, is one of an estimated 50 Americans who joined the insurgency in Syria. And now U.S. authorities are gravely concerned they're being recruited to carry out terror when they return home.
One of our greatest concerns is Al Qaeda operatives in Syria training Westerners, including Americans, that have legitimate travel documents that can travel back to Europe and the United States. And hit Western targets. Right now, the fight's in Syria, but tomorrow they want to bring the fight back to the United States.
Syria, 2 years into a brutal civil war pitting radical Islamist groups and more moderate rebels against the regime of Bashar al-Assad, has become a new base for recruiting, training, and launching terrorism against the West, including the U.S. A U.S. official tells CNN foreign fighters now number in the thousands, and most of them gravitate toward the more radical extremist groups, which have operational ties with core Al Qaeda. The official says the U.S. is now watching closely for signs their ambitions, including those of Americans, could be morphing into operational planning.
They're well-trained, they're radicalized, and they have the ability and the intent to strike the U.S. homeland.
American fighters have bragged about their violent exploits in Syria.
Bashar al-Assad, your days are numbered. You're gonna die no matter what. Where you go, we will find you and kill you.
The fear now that others may someday brag about terrorism at home.
That's it for now. Come on.
Now, there are several ways U.S. authorities are tracking these Americans, their travel documents, of course, but also human intelligence sources on the ground in Syria, signals intelligence, phones and emails, and interestingly, via social media, these fighters like to brag about their experience on the ground there, and then they post it on Facebook, Twitter, Wolf, and that's one way that we're able to keep track of them.
There are real fears that terrorists cutting their teeth in Syria could spread across the EU. Europeans make up a big chunk of the 17,000 foreign jihadists thought to be in the war-torn country. The biggest European contributor is France there. As many as 700 of its nationals could be in Syria right now. Belgium and the UK are also in the top three. The worry is that what happens when they return home. Archie Sarfaz caught up with one British citizen who lost his brother to a war thousands of miles from home.
They're young, British, and they're travelling to Syria in their hundreds.
If people are being killed, you're going to help. How could you argue with that kind of thing?
And according to one expert, they're now part of the largest European Islamist foreign fighting contingent in recent times.
They add up to at least 1,100. And if you use the maximum estimates, you get to over 1,700.
It was from this picturesque seaside town of Southsea in Portsmouth that a group of young men recently left to go and join the fight in Syria. About a month ago, news reached the community that 23-year-old Defector Jaman was killed whilst fighting on the Syrian front line. This is the local mosque that Defector and a number of his friends attended before they left for Syria, where they joined one of the most radical opposition groups operating in the country, ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Sham. Now, before he died, Defector was active on social media, posting videos and updates of the group's activities there. Now, in the first interview since his brother's death, Mustaqim Jaman exclusively tells RT he wants to set the record straight about who his brother really was and why he thinks he went to fight.
The only difference between him and a normal soldier going out is a uniform. Just because he wasn't in a uniform that supports his nationality, he's being looked at like a terrorist or something else, like, you know, a jihadist as they call it, just because he wasn't in a uniform. But what's the difference is that the people in uniform, they don't always fight for the people, they fight for what benefits them as a country, and what he fought for was for the people.
Like many foreign fighters, Defector had crossed into Syria via Turkey. It was only once there he informed his family he'd gone to fight jihad, or holy war. Do you think that the young men that had gone there are misinterpreting what jihad is?
Completely misinterpreting about the jihad. And especially in the Syria case, it is completely wrong concept and wrong idea there.
Other members of the religious community we met in Portsmouth agreed, and they're under no doubts as to one of the major challenges in tackling youth engagement.
Social media, their friends in other places, they get led down a path of, oh, this looks interesting, oh, and suddenly they're listening to a teaching that I know that our leaders here in Portsmouth would not support.
I don't think the problem exists within any of the mosques in Portsmouth per se. The issue lies in where, if those mosques are not delivering what the youth want, they may look for it somewhere else.
Across the country and Europe-wide, and the Syrian conflict is engaging a young generation like never before.
A few years ago, me and my brother and my friends, we were just ordinary boys, we never thought about this stuff, we never spoke about it. We were still, still aware of what's going on around the world, but we never thought, that my brother, the one that's 1 year older than me, is going to be on who died in a battlefield. It's just something that hasn't sunk in for me or a lot of people. So I know it's happened, but it still hasn't sunk in. The full force hasn't been hit yet. No.
Sarah Firth, RT, reporting from Portsmouth in the south of England.
And for more, the Europeans joining jihadist fighters in Syria were now going to Belgium next. RT has been closely following the story of a Belgian father whose son converted to Islam and left for Syria to fight alongside the rebels there. Well, the young man has since returned home, and his father, Dmitry Botnik, joins us now live. Mr. Dmitry Botnik, welcome to RT. Very nice to see you again. The last time we spoke, you said there was little chance you would see your son again. How did he manage to get back?
Well, guys, glad to hear from you, and I succeeded in my third mission to bring my son back, and that's according to this mission. So this appeals that I make in the media that I was looking for my missing son, it reached them on the field in Syria. And today there is white smoke. I succeed in my third mission to bring my son back, safety in a good.
Why did he decide to leave Syria? Tell us more about his time there.
Well, first of all these media appeals I make in the past, that I was looking for my missing son, it reached them on the field in Syria. It reached them. So my son, he told me, he couldn't believe it first, that his own father was in Syria looking for him. And after he said, yeah, I know my father for sure, he wouldn't have been here in Syria. So it's according to the media that I succeed in my mission, and all these appeals that I make in the media to return, we succeed with it.
Dmitry, what exactly was your son doing in Syria? Did he take part in actual battles there?
No, my son he never fight in Syria. First of all, my son he have been in Syria for to make his own jihad. What did decide my son to come back to Europe? First of all, because the appeals I make in the media, and we succeed in this. And second, because he realized also that he don't want to die as a martyr in Syria. He asked himself many times the question on the field in Syria: is this my future? Is this the world I wanna live in? And after he sees so many cruel things and incredible things, he decided to return to his family, which one he miss also his family, his mother and father and sister and all these kind of things.
Okay, well, what was the Belgian authorities' response? What was the response of Belgian authorities to your son being in Syria?
Yes, the response of the Belgian authorities is a scandal. It's disgusting, because we never have support or respect or solidarity. In fact, the major from the city where my son lives, he cancelled the residence address of my son. And when my son returned, the Belgian justice arrested my son. Do you really think this is the right way to bring youngsters back to Europe? Never. Never. In fact, all these youngsters will never return, because all this news received them in Syria, and what they say, if we come back, they're arrested.
How many young people from Europe are fighting there? Where do they mostly come from? What's motivating them? Tell us more.
Look, I'm sure about it, there is no doubt about it. If we're talking about only Europe, we are talking about, and believe me, I know what I'm saying, we are talking about between 15 and 20,000 European youngsters that are in Syria at this moment. And every day, they are still going to Syria, mondial, from all over the world. They still arrive in Turkey in the airports. They just pass the border in Turkey, Syria, and they're all still going to Syria. Government is doing nothing to stop this. They're doing nothing to stop this. And in fact, the only something Belgian government is doing, they are talking about it, what we're going to do with these youngsters when they return. That's the only something they are talking about. But they don't take responsibility. Then don't take responsibility to stop the polemic of youngsters going to Syria. And why they spread smoke and mirrors? Why? To lead the attention away from the real problems. Because they fail in holding and stopping youngsters going to Syria.
Dimitri Bondnik, father of a Belgian who went to Syria to fight alongside the jihadist forces there and recently came back home. Dimitri, thank you very much indeed for your time and for sharing.
And as chemical weapons in Syria are being sought out and destroyed, spy chiefs in Europe have warned of a rapid rise in citizens going out there to fight. Counter-terrorism analysts say 1 in 10 of all foreign fighters come from the continent. And as the EU's top intelligence official has warned, they pose a serious threat to their home countries if they make it back from the fighting.
I am French, born to French parents. My parents are atheists and do not subscribe to any religion.
Nicolas now calls himself Abu Abdal Rahman, having found Islam on the internet in 2009. In this video, he's urging Muslims to join the fight in Syria. His younger brother, Jean-Daniel, was persuaded to join up too, but he was later killed in Aleppo. And this is just one of many such videos online of young Europeans calling their peers to arms. French and Western intelligence services have intensified their warnings on Europeans heading to Syria to fight. Nowadays, they've noticed not only a sharp rise in the number of individuals heading over there, but also in the kind of people who are joining the fight. They say that more and more they are more committed to the struggle. And upon their return to Europe, there's still no clear-cut way to de-radicalize these individuals. For the French, the memory of the terror attack by Frenchman Mohamed Merah that killed 7 people is still fresh, heightening fears of a repeat when radicalized young men return to France.
Most of those people are native French people. Merah traveled to Afghanistan and Pakistan and probably to other places of warfare, of jihadi warfare, and he was not caught. There was a huge debate here as to how we were able not to arrest him on grounds that he had been fighting in Afghanistan, or at least training there.
In the summer, Germany's interior minister suggested a temporary ban on fighters returning home. Belgium, on the other hand, had been working with Turkish authorities to bring their nationals back. Arrests in Europe have already been made, but there still isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. And the EU's anti-terror chief says, nor could there be. The difficulty remains determining who's a potential threat and who isn't. Tessa Ercilia, RT, Paris.
The plague of terror sweeping the nation, especially fighting Al Qaeda, that should be the main focus of the conference. This according to the Russian foreign minister. Some jihadist militant groups refuse to play by anyone's rules, adopting the every man for himself tactic. Marina Portnaya picks up the story.
When the enemy of your enemy is your enemy, things can get complicated. It's a conundrum the U.S. faces in Syria, where political, financial, and military support to the rebels has subsequently served to create a new hotbed for Al Qaeda.
If Bashar al-Assad did not stay in power, or if he's weakened, then Syria could become that base, another base like Pakistan and Afghanistan before it, to be used as a springboard to go into these other countries.
Experts say an influx of extremist groups has turned the war-torn country into a terrorist training center, posing a greater threat to American interests than the leader Washington wants removed.
These groups are much more dangerous. We have tens of thousands of international fighters coming in a very fundamentalist capacity. We've almost come full circle after Afghanistan and 9/11, where we were seeing these groups still fighting for fundamentalist principles.
What began as an anti-government uprising 3 years ago has turned into an internal fight between opposition blocs. The Free Syrian Army, set up to battle Assad, has more and more found that its hands are full just defending themselves against jihadists who are seeking a foothold in the country. This leaving U.S. officials acknowledging a loss of control over the war it initially supported.
We too are deeply concerned about the rise of extremism. The world needs no reminder that Syria has become the magnet for jihadists and extremists. It is the strongest magnet for terror of any place today.
And as world powers start gathering in Geneva to map out a peace plan for Syria, they are being asked to pull the plug on terrorism.
The Geneva conference should produce clear results with regard to the fight against terrorism in Syria. In particular, it needs to put pressure on countries that are exporting terrorism by sending terrorists money and weapons to terrorist organizations, especially Saudi Arabia and Turkey, and of course the Western countries that provide political cover for these terrorist organizations.
Organizations no one ever imagined America would in any way support. Marina Portnaya, RT, New York.
Just over my shoulder on the map behind me, you can see the territory under the control of the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant, or ISIS. Its bloodlust saw the jihadist group even denounced by Al Qaeda. Recently, the ISIS executed 21 civilians in a children's hospital that it had taken over for its base. Now, some experts think that this must be the top of the agenda of the Syrian peace talks.
We do not want to see another Libya reproduced in Syria, where you have, the breakup of the country and basic warlordism in various parts of the country and incitement of very serious sectarianism and so forth. You have these Al Qaeda affiliated groups banning music, images, and of course they have zero respect for women's rights and so on. So what is the priority here? The Syrian opposition's stance is rash and wise and counterproductive, given the fact that they have serious emphasis on Syrian national integrity and sovereignty in light of the intrusion and the very destructive role of thousands of foreign forces who have zero commitment to the values of free democratic Syria as well as the rights of women and so on.
After 3 years of terror, with a death toll of over 100,000, diplomacy and common sense come together with one message. War is not the answer. Does peace have a chance?